All right, so today's a little bit different format than usual if you follow the channel. But recently I was asked to come speak on a panel here in downtown Austin, Texas, about creating awareness for your brand, right? Like how to get noticed. There's so many people in the world that are trying to have people discover their brand, discover their service, discover their product offering, whatever it looks like specifically for you. And how do you do that in 2019 when there's so many people, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, or any form of social media, anything online as far as the digital space? How do you get noticed? How do you get your brand and your business noticed so that you can stand out and get an advantage? So welcome to that. We cut it down so it's just the portions that I spoke, so you can check that out. But welcome to today's episode. All right, I will keep mine as concise as possible. My name is Chris Michael Harris, and I started my entrepreneurial journey, at least my first official entrepreneurial endeavor, from my college apartment, and it was a brick and mortar service-based business, and through the use of content, we grew that business to multiple seven figures within 36 months from that time, with literally like not a clue in the world as to what we were doing. So from that point, really kind of doubled down on content and started a podcast because I was having these amazing, like ridiculous, really tough times growing a business as quickly as we were, and I was like, you know what, someone needs to hear this and what's going on, and we decided to launch a podcast. I was having these high-level conversations. Let's record this so somebody can benefit from it. Within 2 weeks, that show was trending top 5 in the world on iTunes under business, health, and education, which we then leveraged to land some names like Damon John, Barbara Corcoran. I think we're at 40 New York Times bestselling authors, Grant Cardone, Guy Kawasaki. So it's like the people that I used to read their books, it's like, holy shit, I'm talking to this guy now on a podcast, which is really cool. So all of the things that I've been involved with from an entrepreneurial standpoint have really thrived and grown as a result of content, and so I presume that's why Moby wanted me here tonight, but I look forward to talking more about how we've done that and from a practical standpoint how you can do the same.
Because let's talk about your paid community.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get into something first if you don't mind.
It's too
kind of follow up
you can't
because
do it.
it's a really important point about what Amanda was talking about. Like with my first business, that entire 7-figure build was done with a hyper-local marketing strategy. And so one of the biggest things that I see people making a mistake with is that they don't want to roll up their sleeves and do what perceivingly is like the grunt work, right? Like they just want to get online and create content and like service the world. And the problem with doing that, and the reason that we benefited and grew so quickly, and I've done the same thing right now, like I'm a business and performance coach, and I'm transitioning into what you're talking about with digital assets and selling community, you know, having people sign up for a community or membership or whatever, is when you do that hands-on face-to-face work, you get to know them at such a deep, innate level that your marketing, because the hardest part about content is that you don't have the benefit of, right, like I can have a conversation with you and I can watch and present whatever I'm selling and I can see how you react and I can respond accordingly. When you're selling online, you don't have that opportunity to have that back and forth engagement, right? So your content has to ring true to them on such a deep and meaningful level that you cover all of their objectives. Anything they're going to say, they're like, yeah, well, I'm stuck here. You're going to nail all those points, whether it's objections, pain points, emotional cues, whatever, right? You're not going to have those unless you do the work hands-on first, right? And that can start with a hyper-local marketing strategy. So if you're seeing kind of a trend, it sounds like most of you kind of start in that similar fashion where you did a lot of the hands-on work yourselves. If you look, you might look on Google Maps. If you came to this location, you might have seen my name pop up. Like I have an office here and I 100% took advantage of that, right? I get a lot of clients from just being here and seeing my name on the map and being like, what is this guy all about? And then coaching them accordingly. So I don't want to diminish that. I think it's really, really important. And that was, so back to the original question you were talking about where you got your first contract from, I believe, whatever it was. We totally leveraged other people's platforms, right? Because as you're creating YouTube videos, or for me, blogging was a real go-to. Like that's what grew both of my companies, the way that we've grown, was blogging. But you may need to eventually, you may need to initially take advantage of other people's platforms, right? So you talked about Craigslist, Yelp, if you can get features from people that are local, and so on and so forth. If you want to do your citations, your local citations, so you can get aggregators to have you populate your listing here in Austin, that could really benefit you. But I don't want to diminish the value of that because it's highly, highly important. What were you going to ask me about digital assets, communities? What about paid?
Yeah, your paid community, what is it and why did you start that one?
Okay, so in doing the work that I was doing as a business coach over the past 2 years, what I was finding is I was referencing a lot of the books that I had read. I'm like, oh, this is from Thrive by Arianna Huffington, and you need to go check this out. And I would literally, part of the curriculum was go read this book. Simultaneously, I'd be sharing insights from books on Instagram, or I'd write a blog, or I'd have a lot of my podcast guests. I would say probably 60 to 70% of my guests that come on my show, they're authors and they're promoting their book. So I was like, how do I create a symbiotic relationship around this idea of like books and the curriculum that I'm giving to my clients, but having that a more scalable, platform, right? And I was also getting people on Instagram that saw me post something about, hey, this is a chapter from a book I read or whatever, and I'd have people DM me and say like, what books do you recommend I read? So the book thing just kept coming up and up and up, like whether it was with my clients or whether it was online, right? And that's part of content, is analyzing your content and seeing what people are resonating with, because that really is going to tell you what to create more of, especially if you want to get paid. And so this idea of books just kept coming up and what they should be reading and so on and so forth. So I created a beta community about 5 months ago. We filled the first 120 seats like that, with an audience that we'd already built. And we kind of just basically had around the premise of, I am extremely ADD, right? Like if you listen to me talk, I'm 100% going off on some tangent somewhere else that I'm not even supposed to be talking about. So reading was always a real challenge for me, right? And so I created the system that works for me that coincidentally also worked for busy entrepreneurs, which is just read 7 to 10 pages a day, right? Any book that you can find, business related, you're going to be able to finish that book in 30 days if you just read 7 to 10 pages, right? So we're so conditioned, the high school and college mantra of like, wait till the day before the test and then just get it all in your brain and then try to pass the test. But that's not how you learn, right? And so we started teaching this methodology to people about how to read consistently, just incorporate it into their day. And at the end of every month, we do a web class, and every week we do live streams where we give updates and discussion questions. So they're really like implementing the things that they learn as they're learning it. And so far, and this is the beautiful thing about everything I've been talking about here, is I got to know at such a deep level what people needed, right? Like what they really, really needed when it came to reading and when it came to learning and getting, the benefits from that. In the 5 months and the 120 seats, whatever we filled, I think our churn, we've lost 7 people in 5 to 7 months or 5 to 6 months total, not like percent every month, we've lost 7 total people. That's it. So now, and the benefit of doing that, and again, I may be getting way ahead of myself here, we're going to get into some advanced stuff, but taking the time to sharpen the axe before you swing, getting the opportunity to get to know these people, and having a churn rate that's so low. Now when you talk about what you're talking about with paid advertisement, you're filling a bucket that doesn't have holes, right? And so it's really, really, really important. And plus, while you're beta testing that, to be able to slow down in beta and get to know what those people want in that paid community, right? Asking them, pulling them aside and having beta groups within your beta group, right? And talking about what they're looking for specifically from this community, how they're benefiting, what they don't like about it, what they want to see different about it, so on and so forth. What you're learning is literally the messaging that you need to utilize when you do a paid ad, right? So that you can fill that up really quickly. And I'm gonna let Kim talk more about that, because that's exactly what she's been doing with content, with her paid advertisement, is she's grown her community from 250 people to 1,050 people in like 6 months, from literally almost exactly what I'm talking about. So it's a very repeatable process. Sorry, I don't know if I just like set you up to have to talk, but it's a very repeatable process across multiple industries, and it's the same basic principles that you could apply.
Let's say I want to start selling my services or products, and I'm positioning myself as an expert, because you kind of have to do that. You can't say that I have 25 years of experience when you're 23 or even 28, right? But you have to be like, I'm credible because I've done X, Y, Z. I hear this all the time, which is someone told me in a DM recently. I told him, why don't you make a course teaching people what you do? He's like, I'm not ready there. I'm not ready yet. How do you get over that? And please jump in. This is free for all now. You can fight each other for it too.
I think it goes back to what I was talking about before, like rolling up your sleeves and doing the work, right? Like,
but it's scary, right?
No, I get that. But like, so this is a crazy, I had this like health crisis that really just derailed my entire life. This was a few years ago. And so I had to exit and leave the company that I started when I was in college. When I transitioned to coaching, I had that feeling.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, I grew a company that was valued at $7.5 million. Like, why the hell am I having this like issue with teaching people how to do this, right? But that all said, it was like, once I got my first few clients and I put myself out there and they started to get results, I was like, oh shit, I know what I'm talking about, I started volunteering, like I'm here every week. I'm here for Founder Institute. and seeing them like have these like eureka moments where like they pivoted their business or like it was just new track, it was like it was in alignment with who they are or whatever, right? Like you just have to, I don't want to like kill you with simplicity, because it really isn't just this. There's a lot of mental framework that goes into this, and it is an evolutionary process. But it's really being willing to step into that level of being uncomfortable and being like, you know what? I'm not ready right now, and that's okay. Because, and if you want to challenge yourself to do this, this is a really good exercise. Look at the people that you admire and respect, right? So for me, let's say it's like a Lewis Howes, right? A guy has a really like amazing, at this point, celebrity level podcast. Go listen to like his first like 10 episodes. They are atrociously bad. Go look at his first reviews. They're like, dude, jump off a bridge, you're terrible. Like literally, I'm not kidding you. People are like, how the hell did this guy get all these big name guests? He's the worst, right? So I think what we do is we tend to isolate ourselves back into the, oh my God, I'm the only person that has ever gone through this in the history of business. When every single person that is doing what you are doing or doing what you want to do started exactly where you are right now, wherever that is. Whether you're just now starting out or whether you're on the cusp of scale or whatever that looks like, someone else has been right there where you are. And it's a matter of going back and looking, being like, holy shit, they were literally in my shoes doing exactly what I'm trying to do and had the exact same challenges that I have, because that'll normalize it and make it be like, you know what, this is part of the journey. This is just part of the process. And for me, that was like, okay, well, that's fine. Then let's just keep plowing through this. It's just part of my journey. For the dudes in the room, because I see this more with men than anybody else, but when you talk about authority, there's a really dangerous path that you can go down. Again, I'm talking mainly to the guys. I see this more with men than women, is that we think that we have to position ourselves as the hero. Like, that we have conquered the mountain and we have just done all of this stuff and we are friends with whoever, right? Like, or whomever. Note in my introduction, my little elevator pitch, I was like, well, I've had Damon John on my show and all these best-selling authors. Like, that's the typical male thing that we do, you know, as a puff out our chest or whatever. That is going to murder you in the online space, because people want a guide, not a hero, okay? They want to be the hero of their own story. So all you have to show when it comes to authority is, have you done it? Have you helped someone else do it? And can you help them do it? Those are the only three things you have to do. But I made a very critical mistake thinking, because you see all these, like Kim was talking about, the Instagrammers that are like, I'm an entrepreneur and I've done this and I have biceps that are this wide, like all this, you know what I mean? And like, so we fall into that trap. It perpetuates this entire community of people that think that they have to like outdo that guy. Well, I've got biceps this big or whatever, my chest, you know, so like, that is not people want a person. They want somebody that is literally going to guide them to figure out whatever they need. And 10 times out of 10, they will buy from that person over the dude that has the big biceps, right? That's just the way it is. So really, really important. I know I'm speaking more to the men than the women. I've not seen women really do that, but I'm sure it happens too. But when we talk about authority, make sure, because that's a really dangerous topic when it comes to that, in my opinion. More B2B than B2C. Are you B2B? It sounds like a lot of you guys are.
Business
like,
to
do you
business.
do business with other businesses, or you do business with like consumers? Sure. No, but I commend you for doing that, because a lot of people that are in the B2B, like, I don't do content, I'm in B2B, you know, and so I'm glad that you guys recognize that that is a very false narrative. That's the only reason I was highlighting that.
Yeah.
Like if you are in a group, like I'm in a podcasting, several podcasting groups, and people ask the same 5 questions every single day. And so if I'm really, like I've created now, I have a product that we've yet to sell because we're focused on the book club, but I'm building my email list of people that are interested with that tag specifically, learning to build a podcast that, you know, and utilize it as a business or to grow a business. And I'll just drop that blog link in there. And every time, like instead of me explaining it over and over and over again, it gives them the opportunity to read that. And then I have like some call to action on there that they join, and it converts at a fairly high rate. So it's a little bit more direct than just putting it out in the universe and then hoping that somebody finds it, right? Is taking advantage, like I said before, other people's audience, other people's platforms. It's a great opportunity to do that, is to get really hyper specific on groups that you go to and put out your best content to people that ask specific questions about that.
So we kind of talked about how to start that system of creating content inbound and reaching out to start making those relationships, right? Especially if you're in a place with so many meetups, with so many big communities like Austin. How do you do that online? Because you guys have customers all over the US, all over the world. How do you start building relationships online. Because, for example, if I'm selling something around podcasting, I don't want it to be just people in Austin, but that's who I know here. Well, what the hell do I do?
So I think for me, and I'll try to lead, I don't want to go like dominate because you have a lot to provide with this as well. I think it starts with first is identifying what platforms serve what value to you. So there are certain platforms that are really keen on helping you with discoverability. Podcasting is not one of them, right? Like it's very difficult with the amount of podcasts in the market to get discovered unless you can somehow rank new and noteworthy or a trending podcast on one of those platforms. But that's, I mean, Apple Podcasts, like that whole division's like 3 people. Like it's scary how small it is. So they're just not doing much with it. So I don't focus particularly, even though I've had these really big guests on my show, I know that that's not what that platform's for. For me, that's turning fans into super fans. The people that join my email list, I'm sending them content weekly of conversations I've had with these big guests that I mentioned and building that relationship with them. For me, blogging is really the main traffic driver. So to validate that point even further with metrics, 8 months ago, we were like, you know what? We really want to see an increase in our traffic. The podcasting, we were kind of having that revelation of like, it's just not a discoverability platform. Let's double down on blogging. Within 4 to 6 months, we saw a 10x increase in our email list and in our traffic to our website just from doing that alone. So identifying and recognizing what platforms are good for what purposes. I would put Instagram in the nurture category as well. Look at the data. If you're not using Google Analytics in 2019 and really doing deep dives and figuring out where shit is coming from, like you're really missing the 8 ball big time, right? Like it's so important that you know where stuff is coming from because we were spending a lot of time on Instagram, same as the podcast, right? I was on all the wrong platforms doing all of the wrong things, literally. I was focused Instagram and podcast, non-discoverability type platforms that drive CTR, right? So I was looking at the analytics and like I had 20,000 impressions or whatever it was on Instagram, and I had like, it was like, how many people went to my website? 4. How many profile clicks? 6. So I'm not diminishing the value of Instagram, I'm not, right? But there's so many people that are focused on, well, the engagement on Instagram is amazing, and I get likes and comments. Okay, are those likes and comments, are they turning into customers? And if they're not, that's a problem, right? If you own a Walmart location and people come into your Walmart and they don't buy anything, you ain't gonna be running a Walmart for too long, right? So we just don't inherently view the digital space the same way that we view, a brick and mortar or a restaurant or something like that. And like, you need to really do a deep dive on the metrics. And if you don't have, like I said, if you don't have analytics, go home tonight and look at where those traffic sources are coming from and then figuring out which one of those platforms. Look for platforms, you need to be on at least one that is optimized for search. Blogging, YouTube, Pinterest, right? Search platforms where your content's going to live forever and it's not going to last 30 seconds on a Twitter feed and then no one ever sees it because no one's going to scroll down to actually find what you tweeted. Even if it was the most profound shit in the world, I'm going to give you $1 million to whoever responds to this tweet, but no one's ever going to see it, right? Because they're not going to scroll past your first 2 or 3 tweets, right? It's just not going to happen. So it's not that those things aren't valuable. You really need to do the detective work and figure out which one of those platforms is going to serve you and what capacity, and have a strategy that coincides with that. That's when things can really take off, and that's when you start reaching people at a larger scale.
If I have nothing right now, Chris, and I want to make a paid community, let's say I am an expert, but I'm not making any content right now. I don't have a list, but I know my shit really, really well about how to make videos, right? What do I do? And you can go high level on this.
You said to have a paid community?
Yes, because like what you did. Yes.
Well, so the key distinguishing factor of what I'm doing is that I was already doing that work as a coach, right? And so that was an easy transition for me. I wouldn't go from zero, as I mentioned before, I wouldn't go from zero to community, to digital product. I wouldn't do that because like I said before, you don't have the benefit of having the one-on-one with that person to even know, like him said, what's the one thing? How the hell are you gonna know the one thing if you haven't had that interaction with people over and over and over again to be able to just jump straight to community? I think you're gonna fail epically. I think if you're gonna jump into just selling digital products or courses or memberships or whatever, and you don't wanna take that, you can't. Entrepreneurship, there's one fundamental truth. You can't skip the steps. You can do them more efficiently, but you can't skip the steps. You have to do the work, okay? And that's a fundamental, universal truth, and I've seen it over and over in any business. We've tried all these growth hacks and all this bullshit that just doesn't work. It just doesn't, right? There's things you can do like collaboration. That is a growth hack, all right? That's a real growth hack. But when it comes to actually having a community, you should get to a point where what you do it so well, and you're pushing out so much content that's relevant because of the work that you're doing in the real world, that they're like, please sell me something. And that happens. That is exactly how Kim started the Business Lounge. She was so good at what she did, managing retarded amounts of social media, for like 50 plus clients, like all at the same time. Like she had no life. It was crazy. But she was pushing out content simultaneously. It's a transition to going from service provider to content creator. While she was going through that process of working with those clients, and I've done the same thing, I'm just using her as an example, but while she was doing that, she's creating content about the things that she's doing and learning and so on and so forth. So where people literally, they were reaching out like, Kim, please, can I buy something, like anything? Can I please just buy something from you? And so that validated. No, that took a long time. No, that took a long time. And that's the other thing too, that's a really, really good point. It's not what you asked, but I want to make sure that we're being abundantly clear here. You are not going to go home tonight and start a YouTube channel and in 3 months you're monetizing. So don't quit your day job, all right? Keep doing what you're doing. The content aspect needs to happen organically, right? Because it does take a long time. And I always say this, you want to have urgency, not desperation, all right? And so when you get into desperation mode, I always say this, and I'm literally going to trademark and put it on a t-shirt or something, but the dream dies when the bank dries. All right, and so while you're developing content, you need to give it adequate time. So it's really important that you give yourself permission to take a step back as a service provider and let that happen organically, because you need to give yourself time and permission to learn and grow. It's like anything else in life. You don't go from kindergarten to college, right? There's a process that is a formulaic one that you need to go through and follow. So I know that's not what you asked me, but I knew my people so well because I've been doing this shit for so long now, that it was the natural, organic next step. Whatever the next step is for you, it's going to fall in your lap. Like book club? Oh, nope. I never had a desire or a thought to do a book club, but it fell in my lap. So whatever it is that you want to do, it's going to come to you. It's just the way it works. But you have to make sure that you are, and again, I'm beating a dead horse here, but you have to make sure that you're not putting all of your eggs in that basket right now, or trying to jump and skip the steps and go from, hey, I'm really good at this thing, I'm leaving my job and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to sell courses. I promise you, I've never seen that work successfully.
The yellow brick road.
One last thing, I swear to God. One last thing. So when you, that might be painful.
One last thing.
Be painful to be patient, but I promise you one thing. Getting from 6 to 7 figures happens much faster than going from 0 to 6 figures. Because when you hit scale and when you've done this work, it just happens, right? And so you know what you're doing, you have that clarity. So
skill system.
Yeah, so
cool.
It's gonna take it, just do the work. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you guys prefer, actually you can do both. I'm not gonna limit you to one or the other. You can watch everything here on the YouTube channel. There's also some additional stuff that we do here that we don't do on the podcast, but I'd like to invite you over to listen to the podcast as well. So Entrepreneur Hour Podcast, actually just passed 200 episodes. We've had some of the biggest entrepreneurs literally on the planet have been on the show and have visited, and we'd love to have you guys visit both, right? We're doing a lot of content here. We also stream a lot of our interviews are actually now live stream here on the YouTube channel, as well as the talking head videos like the ones you're actually listening to, business tips, advice, so on and so forth. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications too, so it actually notifies you when we have a new video that's up. With every video in the description, we have free resources, links to all the stuff that we mentioned, not today specifically, but in other episodes we actually put all the resources that we mentioned in that discussion. So make sure to check everything below. Share with a friend, like, comment, whatever the case may be. If this doesn't apply to you specifically, but you know somebody that does, like you've got a friend or a member of your family or something that is trying to build awareness for their business, is trying to establish a presence online, share this video with them. Share it on social media, share it on Twitter. Any way you can help us would be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you guys in the